Financial planning is sort of like playing on the chessboard, except the only opponent that you're really facing is yourself, it's challenging because it's emotional. And at the end of the day, it's more than just the numbers. I think that's the part that a lot of people miss out on.
Welcome to Financial Fortitude, a podcast for high earners, families, and business owners. We're your hosts, Michael Acosta
and Brady Hemmerly. Each week, we bring purpose-driven financial guidance to you so you can be assured you're on the right path. If you're looking to become an extraordinary wealth builder, let's dive in.
Welcome to the very first episode of Financial Fortitude. Thank you for joining Brady and me as we introduce ourselves as the hosts of our purpose-driven financial podcast. We're super excited today to be able to launch this. I know this is something that we've both been really working hard towards getting launched and put together because we feel like we have a ton of great content to be able to help all those out there who listen in. We'll also share our personal whys, the reasons we entered the industry, and what motivates us each and every single day that we decide to come into the office and engage with our clients. We'll also discuss how we help clients uncover their own whys because we feel like that is important, especially from a behavioral finance perspective, on their journey to building greater financial fortitude. Lastly, we'll explore when and why one might consider working with a financial advisor, what to look for in one relationship, and what key factors to consider when adding another financial professional or someone that you trust within your sphere or network. Brady, it's great to have you on here, man.
Thank you, Michael. I am super excited, probably just as excited as you to get this thing up and running. I think we've got a lot of awesome stuff to share. Figured we'd just jump right in. I mean, I guess
Yeah, absolutely.
The first question that I have for you is tell me more about what led you into the financial industry first and foremost, and then what's kind of got both of us in the podcast industry now.
Yeah, no, of course, 'cause those are great questions, especially so that we can, share a little bit about ourselves. But what led me into the industry was somewhat of pure luck and maybe even divinity, to be honest with you. So, fresh out of college, working in the financial technology sphere, consulting with financial advisors nationally that have their own practices, I was starting to get a peek behind the scene of how certified financial planners were building their practices, engaging with their clients, the types of investment portfolios that they were developing.
And I'll pause you here. What time frame was this? How many years ago? What year? When did you step into the workforce?
2013, okay. Fresh out of college. I thought I wanted to be a CPA. Quickly realized that I did not enjoy taxes, right? And it's funny because in obtaining my certified financial planning designation, I actually had to spend time, conquering that beast, if you will, getting that monkey off my back because there's an entire segment just dedicated to tax planning. Now, fast forward, I'm in the workforce and it's 2013 and I'm starting to get my personal act together. I have my own goals and aspirations. And around that time, everyone was passing along the Dave Ramsey book, around personal finances, the envelopes, everything like that. And I wanted to make a large purchase. And that purchase, like most young professionals, is my first home.
Sure.
Around that time, I had student loan debt because, lucky me, I decided to go out of state to a private university because I wanted to play lacrosse, and I got to have that experience, which was awesome. But now I got to figure out, how do I pay back this debt as a first generation Colombian American where my parents never went to college, right? They both had high school diplomas and both were successful in their own right within their professions, but didn't really have much exposure to what it looked like to send children to college. And lucky for me, I had two older sisters. All three of us went to the same university, Wingate University, and they played soccer and I played lacrosse. And so here I am trying to navigate this adulting 101 that no one really prepares you for, trying to master my personal finances, which is completely foreign because, again, as a first generation Colombian American, we didn't really talk about finances around the dinner table, right? Like even now when I think about that wasn't something that came up frequently. So long way of me getting there, but in working with these advisors nationally and helping consult them on how to build their investment portfolio offerings for their clients to create scalability, I started to build relationships and was ultimately encouraged to go out and seek out the financial planning profession because of my affinity and conviction for not only helping coach others, but also because I just loved the numbers, right? Which is why I decided in college that I wanted to be an accountant to begin with, because the numbers just spoke to me. And from engaging with me in the office that from a personality perspective, the numbers just or music to my ear from a technical analysis perspective, right?
Yep.
So that's really what has me here today is that I love the numbers. I love solving the problems for clients and taking that piece of that stress off their shoulders and providing them with a sense of financial confidence when I can. But that's enough about me at this point because we don't want to bore everybody. Tell me a little bit, what led you into this great profession that we're in, and how do you bring so much conviction to the table day in and day out?
Yeah. So I would say our experiences, at least to the industry, look a little bit different. And that experience, at least on my end, is without perhaps my knowledge or anyone's knowledge in my family or in my network. I think I was almost born or bred to be an advisor just through the experience that I went through growing up. So probably much different than the first generation immigrant, right? Kind of making their way through college planning, making their way through how do I figure out this investing landscape or this wealth building landscape on my own. I was someone who grew up where money was not the first thing that we talked about at the dinner table or in elementary school or in middle school, but money was very much an open conversation in my household. Growing up, staying organized, staying ahead, being good at saving money and preparing for your future was just kind of the pinnacle, or at least the foundation through which I was raised. So we had a financial planner growing up. My family did, that we would spend a lot of time with and had a personal relationship with. I was sitting as a 9, a 10, a 15-year-old in financial planning meetings, really not to my liking in any form or fashion at that time. But I was sitting in those meetings essentially listening as to, hey, this is important for you to spend time and learn about as someone who eventually is going to have to manage their own finances down the line.
And so basically you can give a shout out to your parents for helping prepare you subconsciously for this profession where you've found success,
yes.
right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, but I think 10, 15 years ago as a teenager, the last thing I wanted to do was see my parents' financial advisor walk through the door because it meant I have to now sit at the dinner table and listen to him and my parents speak for an hour as I want to go do pretty much anything else but that.
Anything other than that. No, that's great.
But as I went through academic journey, career journey, what I found was I liked being in front of people. I liked coaching, or at least helping people accomplish what their goals looked like. And I liked the numbers, but perhaps not enough to be an engineer, an accountant, or a mathematician of any kind. And that's essentially what led me to the industry. As soon as I graduated college, I knew this is the type of work I wanted to be doing. My biggest conviction for coming to work every day is really, hey, how can I help someone improve their lives, accomplish a goal, or at least just feel more comfortable in what they're doing?
And I think we can both agree, just based on our own personal finances, but also our engagements with our clients, that dealing with money can be stressful, right? Especially when life events occur that you weren't expecting, or everything happens in threes when something bad seems to happen. And sometimes you just need to be able to offload that to someone else, almost like a therapist or a counselor. And you and I discuss this all the time. A lot of our conversations with our clients are almost therapeutic for the client because they're just able to express everything to us, get everything off their chest, off their shoulders, and allow us to really burden that for them, take on that load to then take a step back because we have no direct emotional ties to the situations or the data. And we can actually start to take an objective stance and say, hey, have you considered this? Or, hey, you may not be aware of this type of strategy. This is actually in your best interest. And so I think that, at least for me, is what's rewarding, is that I can help solve the problems.
Yep.
Right. No different than when I used to be on the lacrosse field. It's almost like problem solving on the fly when your first initial move or strategy just kind of blows up in your face.
Yeah. Financial planning is sort of like playing on the chessboard, except the only opponent that you're really facing is yourself or your life situation at any time, which is interesting. It's like a game of golf, sort of, or a game of chess or tennis, but it's challenging because it's emotional. And at the end of the day, it's more than just the numbers. I think that's the part that a lot of people miss out on. Financial planning is not just the spreadsheet.
No, it's not. And there's a lot of psychology and behavioral aspects that go into just personal financial wellness or financial planning as a whole, right? Which is what led you and I to get together and be like, hey, we think we have some great client interactions, some great content that we can riff on, that we can share so that others who are having some of these same concerns or stresses or frustrations have an access point or a resource to be able to go and listen, right? And if they find something that makes sense, maybe implement it on their own or potentially reach out to us, right? And we'll be able to assist them in some form or fashion if it makes sense. And that's one thing we're actually going to talk about in today's first episode, which again, super excited about this. But at the end of today's episode, we're planning on providing some questions that need to be asked if, as an individual, we're ready to hire a financial advisor, or if as a family or if as a business owner, we're ready to partner with someone that has our best interests in mind and whose services align with what we're looking for specifically.
Let's unpack that a little bit. So before you got into the industry, what did you see a financial advisor doing, or what did you think a financial advisor was?
To be honest with you, I had no inclination of what a financial advisor was or what they did.
Okay.
Right? Now, in college, took finance courses, took accounting courses, and economics courses, and understood these ideas or concepts of investing, but it was so foreign to me growing up because, again, it was never discussed.
Yep.
Culturally, within the Hispanic community, I was never really exposed, whether it were my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, or my own parents, ever having a financial advisor or financial professional coming into our household or meeting somewhere, right? The only real exposure I had to the financial sphere in general was probably going to and from the bank to make deposits or to take withdrawals,
Sure.
Which is, some people may not even know what that's like. Because
in this day and age, it's all online, right?
Yeah, everything's online and digital today,
Yep.
right? So that was really my exposures to this. And so when I got into the financial technology sector, it was really eye-opening. It was almost like drinking water from a fire hydrant, but I absolutely loved it. And I just wanted to consume as much of it as possible because there's real power in it, honestly, when it's leveraged and utilized and implemented appropriately according to each unique individual's circumstances. And so for me, and you, honestly, from what you've shared with me, we're on a mission, right? Which is, again, why we're building this podcast series out, because we want to help folks take a purpose-driven approach to their overall finances, right? These are individuals who are high-earning professionals, business owners, or families that want to be as proactive as possible. They don't want to miss out on the opportunity to build wealth. They don't want to misuse time value of money or compounding interest, which are just financial terms and topics that we'll likely discuss on this podcast in the future. Again, be a resource, because I firmly believe that everybody should have a sense of financial fortitude in their households and in their personal lives.
Tell me on your end, at least, how you consider or what you consider financial fortitude to look like, to feel like, and to ultimately be in any situation.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's peel it back. Let's look at the word fortitude specifically. Like, by definition, fortitude is having courage in the face of pain or courage through adversity. Life loves to throw curveballs at us. And we can either have the courage to overcome those moments, or we can cower and crumble. And keep in mind, there are certain circumstances that we just cannot take on by ourselves, right? And so this is where being able to partner with someone who has your best interests in mind is important, and being able to eliminate any sense of insecurities, thinking that, well, I don't make enough money yet, or I don't have enough in assets yet to be able to work with an advisor, or, I have too much student loan debt before somebody might even consider working with me. Well, newsflash, there are certified financial planners out there that specialize in student loan planning, right? Like that is one of our niches here at Genesis Wealth Planning. We help high earners with 6 figures or more in student debt figure out how to find that balance between eliminating their debt while planning for a successful financial future tomorrow, right? And that's just an area of the services that we offer. So for me, it's like, hey, how can we equip folks to find confidence in their current now, knowing that today isn't there forever? Yep. And if we can create disciplined habits and improve the overall outcome of the now, then things have the opportunity to compound and really take off. And that's when extraordinary wealth building starts to occur.
Yep. Oh, I would 100% agree with you there. And I think one of the big things that we see from a client and just an engagement perspective is that a lot of people who don't have a lot of industry experience, who are not always sure of what a financial advisor can do, will do, should do for them, the question that I get from a lot of people is oftentimes like, where or how do I even get started? I feel kind of disorganized. I'm not really sure where to go, and I'm not sure what should be on my radar wherever I stand, right, life-wise, whether it's with or without a family, whether it's I'm starting a business or I work as a W-2 employee. And I think you could probably speak to this very much so, but oftentimes it's really not about jumping to a solution first or like, hey, here's the first thing you should think about. What we do, or we at least help clients try to do, is be that coach or be that therapist first. And a lot of it is defining, what is your why, Mr. or Mrs. Client? What's important to you? What are you working towards? Why are we having this conversation, or why are you even thinking about these things? So the question I have for you, Michael, is like when you're speaking with a new client for the first time, or you're at least just having one of these open conversations with a friend or colleague, like how do you help people discover their why, or how do you get to the bottom of what someone's why is?
So the way that I actually address that is just through asking a ton of questions, sitting back and being quiet, right? I want to truly build an understanding of what makes the client tick. No different than if I go get my annual physical, before the doctor's going to prescribe me anything for any sort of aches and pains that I have or miscomfort, they're going to collect data first, and they're going to ask me a ton of questions. And, from there, they're then going to be able to provide a diagnosis, which will then lead to some sort of treatment plan. So through that initial first date, that's what I tell everybody. Hey, this first conversation, you don't know me from Adam. We're going to go on a first date together. And if you recall what that first date experience was like,
stressful, emotional,
you didn't know what to wear, right? Yep. Hopefully they show up if it's a blind date,
on time,
right? Which is very common, on time. Hopefully they don't cancel on you last minute. But no, in all seriousness, it's a matter of, can we confirm or at least check off these boxes of, do we like each other? Do we trust each other? And are we compatible? Yep. If we can check these 3 boxes off, just like on a first date, there's a high probability that we might establish a client-advisor relationship in some form or fashion, right? Just based on the overall needs. And that's because, honestly, financial services or financial planning, financial advising is more of an art than a science to an extent. That's because every advisor is going to have a different spin on their overall philosophy, whether it's investment management, whether it's tax strategies, whether it's risk mitigation strategies for insurance planning, whether it's estate planning. It's getting an understanding of who the advisor is, but also you as a client. What's most important to me, right? If I establish this relationship with you, Brady, as my advisor, these are the things that I want to accomplish over the course of the next 3 to 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
Personally, professionally, and financially. And these are things that either must happen or that I would like to have happen. And I know you, being the reasonable man and logical man that you are, you're going to reel me back in if I share anything with you that is just completely outlandish.
Sure. Just like a first date. Like, hey, that sounds kind of crazy. Tell me at least a little bit more about that before I jump straight to an opinion.
Yeah. Hey, let's go ahead and get married. The first 30 minutes of this date was fantastic. We ordered the same meal, got the same drinks. It's a match made in heaven. Yeah. No, I mean, that's far and few between. I'm sure there are some people where that's happened, right? Maybe. I'll put a huge emphasis on maybe there. But again, the why of the client is what drives everything. I tell the client, that is your true north. That is your lighthouse that is guiding every single hard-earned dollar that you have coming through the door, so that we can be purposeful with how we utilize your human capital. We want to eliminate as much waste as possible. There are tons of books out there, and they always reference that the most successful individuals that the authors have interviewed are typically boring when it comes to their personal finance.
Yes.
They're usually really, really great at saving money. They avoid speculative investments. And then they just rinse and repeat that throughout their lifetime, their financial journey. And there's nothing exciting about that. Nowhere in that statement were we talking about returns on investment or real estate investing or commercial real estate or any sort of cryptocurrency, right? It's all in the disciplined habits. And I know personally through like personal training and training for half marathons that whenever I have an accountability buddy, I typically perform better.
Yes.
Than if I'm doing it myself.
Yep. A big piece of what we hope, or at least try to share, is perhaps before speaking with an advisor or in those first couple conversations when you entertain, should I have an advisor or I'm going to meet an advisor, I think the easiest thing, oftentimes overlooked, that individuals should be thinking about is, well, what's most important to me and why? Not how many dollars do I have in my bank account and is it enough to speak with this particular individual? what's most important to me, why am I doing the things that I'm doing now, and where do I want to be in the future? And from there, it becomes easier on that first date, that second date, that third date to say, well, where do we go from point A to point B to accomplish what's most important to me?
Now, I will say, I've worked with personal trainers in the past, and you're always a little hesitant to truly share all the details of your personal habits around dieting and, how truthful you are with getting to the gym on time and actually doing the workout at 120%.
Yep.
Right. No different than that first date. You don't want to just completely expose all the skeletons in your closet. Yep. How do you as an advisor help prospects or clients overcome those insecurities or those apprehensions when you're conversing with them or engaging with them in a consultative manner, right? Like, how do you help extract the impactful thoughts and feelings that they might have with you as their advisor who's guiding them?
Really what my approach looks like oftentimes, and it's really the KISS approach, right? It's keep it simple, stupid for most of the time. But my approach is often the yes and, right? Is if a client is open, at least to begin that conversation on the first, the second, the third date, I'm just trying to understand, yes, tell me what you'd like to, and then what, right? It's not to dig too deep right away as to, hey, tell me more about that specific lack of savings that you're doing and why, or tell me more as to that speculative investment that you're really attached to. I'm not super interested in diving straight into the ultra specifics because I'm not trying to scare a client away, right? Yes, right. And tell me more, right? I'm still on that first date too. Tell me more about what you're doing, why? Tell me more about what's important, why? Yes, and I like to just keep the conversation open and flowing. And then as I begin to get an understanding of, hey, what is most important to a particular client, I like to lead with, at least from a personality standpoint, this idea of progress over perfection a lot of the time. I'm not meant to be your drill sergeant, your mother and father. I'm not meant to be like this arbiter of perfection and hyper success in your financial situation, right? I'm meant to be the personal trainer or advisor, the coach that you can come to and say, here's what I'm doing really well. Here's what I'm doing poorly. How do we fix it? And it's my job to keep you accountable, but to not punish you for doing things that ultimately may be more important to you than they are to me.
No, absolutely. And there's two things that I'll add to that, right? The first one is never let perfect become the enemy of good.
Yep.
Right? Like in financial planning as a whole, there's always a better best answer. So you might get 4 good or great options to choose from as a consumer or as a retail investor. One is going to be the better best, but you're going to pick one of those based on what you feel is both reasonable and rational.
Yep.
And they're not always one and the same, which we recognize and we understand. The other thing that I would add is that when it comes to engaging with prospective clients or even existing clients, I have no right to judge anyone on the financial decisions that they're making with their hard-earned money or any, maybe money that they inherited or maybe money from proceeds from the sale of a business or a home, right? Because I don't know what their upbringing was like or how money was discussed in their household or how it was viewed, whether it was through the lens of abundance or through scarcity mindset. And that's where understanding the psychology behind money and financial decisions can really come into play, because it really is a safe zone, right? And I encourage clients all the time, hey, it is much easier for you to call me and say, hey, Michael, I'm thinking about making this decision, or I'm thinking about doing this or that or the other, as opposed to calling me and saying, hey, Michael, what do you think about this? I just did this today.
Yep.
And now it's like, oh no, like that was probably not the best decision to make. That wasn't the best execution or use of your funds. And that has nothing to do with the list of goals and concerns that you shared with me from an emotional blueprint perspective.
Yep.
Help me understand how what you just did aligns with what we've been working towards. Right? Now, I will also say, and I think you can agree with this 100%, there has to be balance between prudently and proactively saving for the future, while at the same time having the opportunity to enjoy your best life today.
Yep.
Right? And here at Genesis Wealth Planning, that's ultimately what we're striving for our clients, is to be able to help them find that intersection, that equilibrium between living their best days today or their best life today while planning for a successful retirement in the future.
So that brings me to like one of the apex questions I think both of us have for this episode. And it is, why would someone consider hiring an advisor in general, or perhaps hiring us as advisors? Like, why have an advisor? If I can Google my way through most of the answers, why bother?
Well, one, I feel like Google's only as smart as the actual Googler. And I'm pretty sure that that's a word. Don't quote me on that. No different than a calculator, right? The calculator is only going to spit out what you put in. So, be careful with what you're Googling. Also, individuals who recognize that they need to identify a who and not necessarily focus on the how, right? Because we only have so much time in a day. I think we can agree on that.
Yep.
But beyond that, we only have so much attention span in a day based on that allotted time that we have available. With our phones being attached to our hip and social media distracting us day in and day out, we're being programmed to not be able to hold an attention span for very long. We interact with folks and we speak with them and they're like, hey, I haven't looked at my finances
in a year, in 10 years sometimes.
In 10 years. I don't even know what my paycheck is. I just know it hits my bank account and then I just live my life.
Yep.
And in my mind, I'm like crying for them. I'm like, oh my goodness.
It stresses
Let's work
you
together
out
because I want to help you.
Stresses
Right?
you out more than it does them. It's not even your bank account.
Right. It's not even my situation. But no, I mean, so individuals will typically want to start working with an advisor or start to interview advisors if there's a triggering life event, right? Some of the basic ones are going from being single to getting married, right? Because now you're having to combine finances, potentially, depending on how you want to structure your personal finances. And I think we're going to have an episode coming up in the next couple episodes where it's really focused on providing advice on things that you should do after saying I do, right? So stay tuned, subscribe, come back to that. A little plug for the future. Also, if you change a job, whether it's by choice or if it was completely out of your control, being laid off is not fun. Getting a job offer and opportunity is huge, but how do you quantify the benefits that are being offered if the payment amount, the compensation is not exactly the same?
Yep.
So working with a financial advisor to help you assess that, both pre-tax and post-tax, could be beneficial. Also, if you're planning on, exiting a business that you've owned, business owners work really hard to not only come up with the idea and the service and the solution in the product, but also to grow it over the course of however long they work in the business. Very often they have very little time to dedicate towards working on the business.
Yep.
And then it's a matter of figuring out, well, how do I exit this and maximize my multiple in valuation? And that's where working with a financial planner or someone who specializes in working with business owners can be fruitful.
Yeah. A tougher question to Google is, how do I maximize the value of my very specific niche business that Google has no idea exists outside of the website that I have on it, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, no, exactly. So you and I obviously have come from two different backgrounds, starting in different areas in the financial services industry and then ending up where we are today. What do you see most commonly with, prospective clients as far as the makeup of their overall financial situation?
That's a great question. It really depends on who that particular client is, but I would say the most common clients that I see are those driven by life changes. So oftentimes it is a growing, a younger family, right? I see a client who is looking to essentially move from a working career to a retired career. I have clients who are looking to move from W-2 or from self-employment to the opposite thereof.
Exactly, right? If you have a niche-oriented business, something that's very unique, maybe there's not a huge market for it, collaborating with somebody who can help you proactively prepare a successful exit of your business and then heading into full-fledged retirement could be very valuable to some, right? Could be perceived as being very valuable.
Yep.
Now, that leads me to kind of the focal point of today's episode, right? And the takeaway that we want to be able to provide you. What are some common questions that come up from prospective clients or existing clients that you meet with when you're on that first date?
Sure. Yep. I think that's a great question, and it's a challenge that a number of individuals face, especially when they don't have the best idea of what the playing field or the landscape looks like, right? If you can see across the lacrosse field, you know exactly either what questions to ask or what moves to make to get to
Fastest game on 2 feet. I'm just saying.
you know what questions, what thoughts, how to assess what the landscape looks like when you know what the playing field looks like.
Exactly.
So oftentimes the advice that I give to clients, or the joke that I'll tell to new clients on the first date, is what you and I do is not rocket science. Similar to a personal trainer, a financial advisor is not making decisions or providing advice that is so complex that it's essentially reinventing the wheel or building a rocket at any point. It's kind of like personal training. The joke I like to tell people is everyone could have a six-pack because it's not a challenge to get there answer-wise, right? It's eat less than you're eating today and exercise more and give it some time and you're going to have a six-pack, right? Financial planning is kind of that same process. It's become a good saver. It is invest or put money aside appropriately and protect ultimately what you're doing along the way. And hey, you're probably going to be successful at some point if you have the endurance to do it. So the questions that I have, that's a joke or a diatribe of its own, but the questions that I see most often or most impactful is to begin by understanding, hey, what does your process look like? Advisors do different things. What do you do and how do you do it? Right? That's a very important question for people to begin to get an understanding of what is this relationship potentially going to look like before we have a full conversation or set of conversations.
Well, and I think that that's very important because the financial services industry is very broad and can be generalized to an extent, right? And within the financial services industry, there are financial advisors that specialize in specific areas of the financial planning process.
Yes.
Again, you could have a certified student loan professional. You could be a retirement income certified professional. You could be a certified private wealth advisor who is focused on working with ultra high net worth individuals, right? Talking about 35, 50, 100 million in net worth and needing help because those types of problems are a lot different than potentially someone who has $1 million or $2 million net worth or even $100,000 or $500,000 net worth, right? Not diminishing any of those levels, but again, financial planning is not a one-size-fits-all, which is why I emphasize so much that the advice that you're receiving and implementing, whether it's from somebody on TikTok or Instagram, it's general, right? That just because it's working on their game that they're playing, their board game, doesn't mean that it's the appropriate for you based on the board game that you're playing. So focus on your board game. Don't get caught up in what others are doing, right? But the other thing I want to state is that you kind of diminished the dad bods out there. We've been working very hard on these things all summer, and almost having 4 kids. I got 3 now, 3 little girls, another child on the way later this fall. I am proud of this dad bod. So like the six pack for me is probably gone long away. But no, joking aside, and to add to your analogy or metaphor around personal training, get an understanding of what those expectations are of not only you as the client, but also the advisor. Like, what can you expect out of them as far as how frequently you guys are going to review? What does the onboarding process look like from start to finish? Are they more product oriented or are they more process and diagnosis focused?
Yeah. What's the training program look like? Am I going to take a bunch of pre-workout and hope that pre-workout or that Slim Fast is going to give me a six-pack? Or am I going to get some education and some real thoughts at least around how I'm going to get the six-pack over time? It's a different story.
And the other thing is, in today's day and age with technology and artificial intelligence and algorithms, there are a lot of folks who think that they can do it themselves, the DIYers, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some folks may have the time or the conviction to go and do the research on their own. And for others, they don't have any available time and they have no passion or drive to want to figure it out. And they recognize that, hey, who can I collaborate with that I trust and I like and I feel like I'm compatible with that can help me achieve the goals that I have personally, professionally, and financially? And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know how to change my own oil. So what do? I take it to somebody else.
Yep. And you take it to somebody else. I think this is another question that we receive, or I think is important to ask oftentimes, is I take it to someone else with whom I expect a certain standard of communication or education. Right? I think a great question to ask a potential advisor as you're entering into a relationship is, well, what does communication look like? How often are we going to do it? What is the focus of that communication going to be? And what is the driving factor behind that communication? When I bring my car to the mechanic, I don't want them to teach me how they're changing the oil and why. I just don't have an interest in it. If I take my car to the mechanic and maybe I'm aspiring to be a mechanic one day, or it's a really keepsake car for me, I want to understand exactly what's going on, maybe I do start asking those questions. So for some clients that I have, or we have, they hire us because they don't want to talk about this stuff. They want to make sure that a person who they can trust is doing the best as they can on their behalf. We have other clients that want to learn every single step of what we're doing and why, because, hey, they're taking a real interest in their training program.
Absolutely.
So communication and expectation setting, I think, is huge, especially when you're understanding what does the landscape look like, or what options do I have out there for a financial professional.
No, absolutely. And I would even say it is a lot like dating. We keep coming back to this metaphor, this analogy, because if you've had a bad relationship in the past with another advisor, well, guess what? You have the opportunity to have a new genesis.
Yes.
Right? To have a new starting point and to be able to cultivate a new relationship based off of the foundations of new expectations. And this goes back to making sure that when you're interviewing these advisors or these potential financial advisors, that you have a really good grasp around what services do you provide, right? Are you paying for something that you're never going to utilize?
Yep.
Right? So you want to make sure that you're not overpaying for something that you're never going to get the value out of, right? That's one thing. But also, what types of clients do you specialize in servicing? Because again, financial planning as a whole is very broad and generalized, but there are opportunities for financial planning professionals to be able to really drill down, narrow and deep into a specific area of the financial planning process. And good on them for being able to focus in on that and build out a service model or offering that those specific clients can really get value out of. Now, the last and most important question I think that most individuals should ask a potential advisor is going to be around, how are you compensated? How do you make money? And are you required to always keep the client's best interest in mind, or are you held to a unique standard or code of ethics?
That's huge, right? It's an easy question to ask, but it's huge when it comes to an understanding standpoint.
And it goes back to doing a little bit of research in advance, but knowing that, hey, there are different ways that financial professionals can be compensated. Okay. And so just make sure that whatever their response is, that you feel good with it, that you truly understand the process. Because if you don't, maybe there might be some hesitation there. Because the one thing that I emphasize with all relationships is that you could hire the best personal trainer in the world that has the best track record with getting individuals from having a dad bod to having a six-pack.
Yep.
Right?
Olympic-style athletes.
Olympic-style athletes. However, if me as the consumer never shows up on time for my personal training sessions, if I do not do the right things outside of the gym around diet, sleep, hydration, and I do not come ready to work at high levels of intensity, I'm never going to get the results that I want.
Yep.
And then I'm going to build resentment with that relationship. So same concept when it comes to collaborating with any other type of professional in your life. If you're going to pay for a service, make sure that you come ready to be coachable as well as prepared to engage, because you're only going to get the most out of it based off of what you're putting into it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Now, again, there have to be expectations that are defined and met between both the client and the advisor. So if those expectations aren't being laid out, or if you have a little uncertainty around what's expected of you, make sure that you express that, ask the questions. And if, the advisor should be willing and wanting to define that, because trust me, the better the client understands what we expect of them, the easier our lives are, especially when we're doing data collection or needing responses.
Yep. And I guess that brings me to the last question I like to almost ask as a teaser, and it's more of the theme of the episode, is an easy question perhaps to ask is to your advisor, he or she, why are you doing what you do? Why are you here instead of working any other job? I ask clients that oftentimes, okay, why are you here speaking with me? It's important, something is. And so you may get surprising questions from your advisor as to why they do what they do. And it may help you discover this is either the perfect person or relationship for me to work with, or maybe this is a good opportunity for me to go explore what other options look like. So just understanding that this very much is a business relationship, but you're bringing someone into your world that ultimately is going to stick by your family and someone you trust to help make good decisions on your behalf. So it's nice to know who they are and why they do what they do.
So with that being said, tell us, why do you do the things that you do? Why are you here today?
I think I'm here. I know I'm here. It changes every day. Can change every day. I'm here because ultimately I feel very strongly in that the education, the experience, and the upbringing that I had led to significant success, at least that I've experienced personally. And I'm very aware that that success that I've experienced in my life is not as much of a product of my own. Some of it is, but a lot of that success can be attributed to having good experiences, good mentors, good teachers, and people who focused on the importance of staying organized and making sure financially that you are in a position of success. So I see the reason as to why I'm here is to pay that forward by being a steward or a coach to making good financial decisions and helping people accomplish their goals. I'm very thankful for the experiences that I've had in my upbringing. I want to share that or at least pay it forward to people who either have had similar experience and are looking to pay it forward themselves, or have not had that experience and are looking to make a difference in their own lives. That's why I'm here. How about you?
I love that. I love that. Yeah, for me, it's going to go back to when I was in the throes of adulting 101 and trying to pull it all together to kind of elevate myself to the next phase of my mid-20s. And what I recognized was that there weren't many outlets around this time, 2015, where financial advice, working directly with a financial advisor or certified financial planner, was accessible for someone that had the makeup of my personal financial balance sheet.
And your upbringing, your experience in the financial world.
Right. I mean, one, I didn't know the right questions to ask, and two, I didn't really know where to look. But what I did know, based on the advisors that I was consulting with and some high-level research that I had conducted, was that there were a ton of barrier to entries, right? You need to have asset value minimums. You need to have a certain level of net worth. And so for me, income, certain levels of income, right? And for me, it was a matter of, well, I can continue to do the robo things, right? And try to figure it out myself. And I was fine with that. Again, I like the technical analysis and the data and the numbers and just figuring out problems. But I also identified that, hey, if I'm having these questions and these concerns, aside from just my cultural upbringing and my demographic, there are probably hundreds of thousands of other people as well that are having some of these same frustrations, concerns, and insecurities. I felt like, hey, there is a true problem here, and I think that there's a solution, and it's a service offering for these folks, for this demographic of individuals that have very little barriers to entry. And so I went on a mission to establish and define a subscription-based financial planning service that's available to individuals, families, business owners, so that there are less barriers to entry. It really comes down to, do you see the value in the services that I'm offering you as a unique individual, right, with the custom tailored advice that I'm providing from a comprehensive perspective or a limited scope perspective, just based on whatever we agree on and define within the agreement or arrangement? And do you have the cash flow? Is it prudent for you to pay the fee? Because one thing that I know is that it doesn't make sense to charge somebody something if you know for a fact that they can't afford it.
Yep. Or you're not providing any real value to
or you're not providing any real value to that person. Yep. At some point, someone needs to be the bigger person and just say, hey, this isn't in your best interest. Which is why being a certified financial planner is important to me, because we as professionals are held to a specific code of ethics and standards of conduct for our clients. With that being said, I'm sure we could really riff on this for much longer than what we have today, but super excited to continue the conversation with other topics. If you found this content helpful today, please don't hesitate to like, subscribe, and share with friends, family, and colleagues. And you can also visit our website, genesiswealthplanning.com, or you can email us directly on our contact page at www.genesiswealthplanning.com/contact.
Michael, thank you so much for joining me today, for sharing all of the personal details life-wise, why you're here. And I guess we'll have a training plan developed or six-pack plan developed for each episode moving forward.
I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, Brady.
All right. Thank you for joining us this week on the Financial Fortitude podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show and learned something along the way.
If you're looking for financial guidance that is personalized to your specific needs, we're here to help. Visit us at www.genesiswealthplanning.com to book a complimentary consultation.
That's it for today. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. And as always, please share with others you feel could benefit from the show. See you next time.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Although the information has been gathered from sources believed to be reliable, please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Park Avenue Securities, Guardian, or Genesis Wealth Planning, LLC, and opinions stated are their own. Guardian, its subsidiaries, agents, and employees do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. Consult with your tax, legal, or accounting professional regarding your individual situation. Michael Acosta and Brady Hemmerly are registered representatives and financial advisors of Park Avenue Securities, LLC. Securities, products, and advisory services offered through Park Avenue Securities, member FINRA, SIPC, financial representatives of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. Park Avenue Securities is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian Consolidated Planning Group, Inc., and Genesis Wealth Planning, LLC are not an affiliate or subsidiary of Park Avenue Securities or Guardian. Michael Acosta's California Insurance License Number 0M50974, Brady Hemmerly's California Insurance License Number 4353077, 2024-176978, expiration 826.